Welcome to episode 52 of Military Veterans Podcast, where we talk to veterans to learn about their stories and experiences. And today we're joined by Tony Hulton. Hey, Tony.
Hey, Gav. Thanks for having me on the pod.
No problem. How are you doing today?
Yeah, very well, and great to be in your home studio, looking good, and also great to be back in the Medway Towns after 35 years.
Yeah, good. It's been a while, isn't it, since you've been here? But we'll cover that when we come on to you, where you were born and stuff like that. But yeah, thanks so much for popping up here. You are the first recording I'm doing in my new flat, so fingers crossed upstairs won't be you.
I feel very privileged.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Well, when we started recording, I did say this was episode 42. I forget we're so far ahead in time now. But yeah, 52, which is brilliant to be getting so far on with the episodes. But with every episode, we do have the 4 questions to get going. And then we'll dive into the heart of the show, all about your career in the military. How's that sound?
Excellent. Looking forward to it.
Great. Well, the first question is, when did you join the military?
So I joined the Army in September 1995.
September 1995. And the next question is, what service and branch? So you mentioned the British Army.
Yeah, I joined the Royal Armoured Corps, 1st of Queen's Dragoon Guards. We're Formation Recce.
Ooh, nice.
Well, in fact, at that time, main battle tanks, Challenger 2.
Okay, fantastic. The third question is, how long did you serve for?
So I served for 6 years in the regular army and then a further 8 or so years as a reservist.
Fantastic. It'd be good to hear what that kind of like transition over is for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the last one is, what rank did you get to?
I left as a major.
As a major. Nice. And I won't be calling you sir. I'll keep it as Tony.
Don't.
That's
Tony.
Cool. Yeah,
I'm definitely
stuff.
a Tony.
Well, let's rewind the clock. Where were you born and where did you grow up?
So I was born in Cardiff, which for international listeners is the capital of Wales. And my father was in the military, so I didn't grow up in a single place. I moved around about every 2 years.
Okay. You moved around every couple of years.
Yeah.
How did you find that? Do you remember that part of your life?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think we moved house. Well, I was born in Cardiff, posted to Riyadh where my father was posted, came back, a place called Barton Stacey. There used to be a barracks there, no longer there, destroyed. From Barton Stacey, we went to Germany, to Rheindahlen for 4 years. Came back, moved to up the hill up here at Chatham, living in Brompton. And then a few quick moves, Swindon, Shrivenham, Christchurch and Dorset and Deepcut.
Okay.
And then my father retired.
And did you like the moving around?
Well, I think it was, to be honest, it was just part of life. So it wasn't, we didn't really question why we did it because you're with an environment and family and friends where it's normal to move on. And I think as we go through this conversation, that sort of will bring me on to the reason I think veterans have so much to offer.
Yeah.
And why I'm doing my current role with Walking with the Wounded.
Nice. And so you went through school, moving around and all that kind of stuff. And was you kind of an academical kid, or did you like sports in a certain way? And if it stand out?
Well, actually, I was. I went to boarding school like lots of kids in the military from the age of 7 to 18. Was I academic? I think I was probably pretty middle of the road. I was definitely a late bloomer.
Okay.
But I had one, I had one key strength in that I was a relatively good athlete, and I think that gave me an advantage in a lot of forms, including when I joined the army.
Okay, that's cool. In regards to that, did you have any family members that were military based aside from your father? But any family members? Yeah,
I mean, my whole, I guess, we are, I would say we are a military family. My father was in the military. His father was in the military, serving in the First World War and in the Second World War. My grandfather's father was in the military. He served in the First World War.
Oh, wow.
He was commandant at Abbeville in the Somme. He also served in the Boer War in India and the 1890s. And on my mother's side, her father was a chap called Wing Commander Dizzy Allen, who was, I think it's fair to say, a sort of Battle of Britain fighter ace, flying Spitfires, and wrote a number of books afterwards about his experience during the Battle of Britain.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I think it's been in the blood.
Yeah. And so, at what point did you feel you were going to join yourself? Was it during the later years of school?
Yeah, I was thinking about this as we were preparing for the podcast, and I didn't really have any other plan other than to join the military. It was never really something I questioned. I did dabble a little bit with a thought of becoming a doctor, because I thought that sounded quite interesting, but I, science wasn't for me. And I also dabbled with maybe becoming a lawyer. But I did a bit, I was lucky to do some work experience in London, and it taught me that, no, I didn't want to become a lawyer.
Right.
So, much of what I've done in life is about what I've not wanted to do rather than what I wanted to do.
Fair enough. And so, what did you say your dad was in? Did you mention
he was a sapper like you.
He was a sapper like me. Oh, fantastic.
Exactly. Yeah. He's
So I didn't know.
Engineers. Yeah.
I didn't know if it was coincident that he was in this area, but that's pretty cool. Did you not want to join that part of the military, or what's the journey with joining for you?
So I think there are two things. I didn't want to join a sort of technical unit, so signal sappers, and so on. I think the pull for me was that, I was born in Wales, and Wales was a place we used to go back to in the holidays. And my great grandfather had been in the King's Dragoon Guards, which was part of the Queen's, which when the QDGs merged, amalgamated in the 50s, became the Welsh Cavalry. And so it became quite natural to look towards Wales. And I think that's where the recruiting officer at school sort of pointed me in that direction. Plus, it had the family link, which is why I ended up with the QDGs.
Great. And what was your journey to join, though?
Yeah.
Was it a pop down the careers office, or was it something at school that you mentioned?
So I was at school. I was in the CCF at boarding school. And actually, I joined it quite in an unusual way, in that I joined aged 18 as a probationary second lieutenant on something called a short service limited commission. So what this meant was you left school after your A-levels, you went to Sandhurst for 6 weeks, and then you went and spent a year with your regiment before going to university. I think nowadays they call it a gap year commission.
Okay.
And I think the goal was really to have a cohort of young men and women who might never come back, but actually would champion service in their civilian lives. It just so happened that I then got a cadetship into through university, so I carried on being cap badged QDG, and then had to go back to Sandhurst for the full course in 1999. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that first part there, that 6 weeks at Sandhurst.
Yep.
Was it a bit of an eye opener, or what you?
So
expected?
I think it was. So you're merged then with all the other. I'm not sure what the correct term is, but specialist officers. So doctors, nurses, padres, and then pour them a group of about 40, maybe 20 kids going on their gap year.
So you're all about
with
the same
the military.
Age. Yeah.
So we're all the same age, and then we've got the rest of them who are in their 30s.
Wow.
Mixed together. I think coming from boarding school, actually going for a 6-week course at Sandhurst wasn't as tough perhaps as it might have been for others who hadn't been in that environment. So, getting up early, morning runs, the discipline around it wasn't unusual. It was great fun. Yeah.
And then how did you find that first year with your cap badge?
Yeah, well, so obviously you turn up, and the reality is, and I think it is for the same for a number of officers, well, for most officers, I think it would be unusual not to have this feeling or understanding, is that, you're carried for your first year. You're carried by senior NCOs, other ranks, and you've got to listen and learn. So I think turning up as an 18-year-old kid with some basic training in Germany and Paderborn, aged 18, was quite an eye-opener, right? I was quite fortunate in that pretty soon after arrival, went up to Norway, to Lillehammer, a place called Shushan, to go and do some, I think we did about 6 to 8 week Nordic skiing camp in prep for the Army's Nordic skiing championships.
Okay.
So that was quite helpful, because going back to what I said earlier, I was quite lucky to be quite fit. So I was able
Right.
to quickly sort of, I hope, establish a rapport with the guys.
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like you enjoyed it. That
Yeah,
was
very good. Yeah, good
and,
fun.
and then you headed off to university.
Well, no, actually, in between that, when I got back from the skiing, I actually deployed with the regiment to what was called Op Resolute. Op Resolute, so this would be in 1996, about April 1996, was the NATO peace support mission to the Balkans. So a period in I guess European history that's in the rearview mirror, but actually throughout the 90s was a key sort of geostrategic issue post the Cold War. And again, I deployed as a probationary second lieutenant. I was attached to a squadron QDGs as a, I guess, jack of all trades, do whatever I was told. And we deployed, I think the troop I was attached with 3 Challenger tanks, some CVRT, so some light recce, armoured recce, and some Land Rovers, and we had a great time patrolling some of the demarcation lines in what's now Bosnia-Herzegovina.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was that an eye opener for you?
Yeah, again, I think you go around with your eyes open and just look and listen, and I guess every now and again the boys take a bit of fun out of you, because you learn, you don't really know what's what, but you've got to kind of you've got to be on your game, and sometimes you might slip up, but that was amazing. We spent a lot of time in those days. I think working with and engaging with communities, winning their trust, ensuring they were protected. And these were deeply scarred communities. It was shortly after the massacre at Srebrenica, and the mass graves had been found. The Dayton peace process was in place. I think had just been signed, or was soon to be signed. So it's a very fragile situation, but a massive learning experience for me.
Yeah. And how long was that for?
So I wasn't there for long. I think, primarily because, there's only a certain amount I could do technically, and I had to get back to university. So I think I was there for the best part of 2 months. I managed to get, long enough to get a medal, push out a bit extra, but obviously the regiment were there for their full tour.
For the full tour.
Yeah.
But still 2 months, considering you're 18, still learning the ropes. That's a pretty piece of experience that not many get,
A huge privilege.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then back, like you say, back to university.
Yeah, I didn't quite go back. I got back, had a few weeks off, and then I went to Uganda and spent about 6 to 8 weeks working with a charity called Age Relief Uganda, which my sister founded, which was in a place called Umbali on the foothills of Mount Elgon.
Oh, really? Okay.
And actually, I'm going to keep coming back to Walking with the Wounded deliberately, because actually that's a different part, different issue. This was around about, supporting vulnerable people in an international context. And so we get on to talking later. You'll see how I join all the dots and what I've done.
Yeah.
So then I got to university.
I was going to say.
Eventually landed at the London School of Economics. Moved to London, lived in halls, university halls, and got on with it.
And what does that look like with Karen, with the commission part?
So
part?
the sort of the obligation on my behalf was that I had to do the University of London Officer Training Corps. My responsibilities were to attend, do the join the training nights on, I think it was a Tuesday night, go away at the weekends with them, and sort of be an active participant with that unit again. And then in the university sort of holidays, I would often go back to Senelaga to join the regiment.
Oh, really? Okay.
Typically for sporting events. So,
right.
To go and do athletics or to go Nordic skiing with them. It's part of their team. And I did that for best part of 3 years. I had a little stint. I did six months with the Honourable Artillery Company just before going back to Sandhurst, but I felt that was a good change, and they have an excellent sort of training course to gear you up. So I thought that'd be a good refresher, get myself in order, ready to get back to Sandhurst.
Okay. And what can you explain about that the artillery aspect?
Honourable Artillery Company.
Yeah.
So I think it's 473 battery. It's quite a tough recruit selection course. I think that I think the role may have changed, but they were preparing augmentees to do long range reconnaissance. So a lot of time in Brecon Beacons. So officer training corps, learning more about leadership management, quite a good social club, doing some sport, Honourable Artillery Company, private soldier. So bizarrely wearing 2 caps.
Okay.
Second lieutenant hat, but actually there I was private soldier, recruit Hulton, and doing what recruits do, learning it all over again.
Yeah.
And I think going back to lessons in life, relearning is something that I think we all need to keep doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But on that, the 473 that you mentioned,
Yeah.
we did have someone on the podcast before that had been there.
Oh, really? Yeah. So I'll have hasten out. I passed the recruits course. I never went and did the patrol course.
You never went and did that? Okay.
Because I then went to Sandhurst.
Right.
But some of my close friends did.
Yeah. Okay.
And I would love to stay, but
because it's quite an arduous. It's a selection course essentially, isn't
Correct.
it? And like the paras, they have a selection course, so
Correct.
it is arduous and difficult.
Yeah.
So
So I've
passed.
heard.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
No, I
good.
didn't pass the selection course. I didn't do it.
You did
I did the first part.
The first part.
Yeah,
My
just to be
apologies.
clear.
Just
Yeah.
like beat up for para.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Definitely.
How long is Sandhurst when you go back? The
So
second
I
time?
went back to Sandhurst, 1 platoon, Blenheim Company, September 1999, 48-week course.
48 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and then plus the 6 weeks I'd done previously. So I probably, other than those who've been back termed, probably done quite a bit of time there. Yeah.
Anything you learnt on that was different to the 6 weeks, or was it all just repeat and extended in some ways?
It's repeat, it's extended, it's much more in depth, obviously. I think you're working with, a much more, mature people's different, but you've got, I was lucky to have in my platoon, people who had already served, who were corporals, sergeants who had been told, go and get a commission. So a huge breadth of experience to learn from. And there's a real seriousness to Sandhurst. Ultimately, it is probably one of the longest courses in leadership and management, whether you're military or civilian. And underlying that, and I think going back to walking with the wounded and why I think veterans and service personnel are different and always will be different, is because in my case, they were training us to build our leadership and management skills in order to ultimately close with and defeat the enemy. And that will always make us different, which is why it's great we do things like these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. So after Sandhurst, and in fact, before we say after Sandhurst, essentially you're there for a year.
A year, yeah.
Standout moment for yourself individually?
I don't think there's an individual standout moment. I mean, I loved it. Some people found it really tough. I really enjoyed it. There were dark moments, I guess. January, February, live firing in the Brecon Beacons is always a bit of a dark period, isn't it? Fighting for washing machines to get your laundry done for parade the next morning. I think one of the best things, there was a group of us who did something called the Sandhurst Cup, where we went over to the US Academy at West Point.
You went over? Nice.
And that was a military competition, which Sandhurst, certainly back then, typically won. We were an all-stars team. And it meant that, I think the 20 of us in that squad really got to spend a bit of time outside the main Sandhurst course. We could drop off in the evenings and learn how to use American weapon systems, understand US tactics, so that when it came to the competition itself, we could give as good as we could get against our US allies.
So what was it like going over there? Because I've been to West Point.
Yeah, amazing place.
I went and competed there in the Warrior Games.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a phenomenal location. West Point essentially Sandhurst equivalent, I suppose, if you put it.
Yeah, I think
like for like.
the key difference between West Point is a university. So I think, I'm not sure of the exact timings, but it's 3 years with military training combined with academic study.
Okay.
So they get a degree as well. Whereas Sandhurst is principally a military focused program with some academic studies, so you're aware of issues around doctrine and so on and so forth.
Fair enough.
But I think that I think we were only there probably a week or so, not long, because it's short and sharp, there for the competition, a bit of pre-training to get used to, the environment. They're very regimented out there. I think it was, I remember the morning alarm would go off, and there'd be this sort of announcement that was, I think, said, get up, all cadets. First parade is at 05:30 hours. Your dress will be, and everyone would get up, get in the right dress, get on parade. So yeah, a few differences, but very cool.
But
and being on the Hudson River, beautiful location as well, stunning, as you know.
Absolutely, and a lot of history there as well, right?
A lot of history, which I need to do more to learn about.
But another experience that not many would get the chance to do. So,
correct, yeah.
Already within like 3-4 years, you've ticked off a lot of things.
So I'm very lucky.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. After your time at Sandhurst, do you know where you're going before you?
Yeah, so I always obviously going back to the regiment.
You are going back, okay.
I think in this case, a pretty standard route for young officers is to go to do their trade training, as it were. So I think we spent a few weeks up in Catterick. The regiment moved to Catterick by this point in North Yorkshire. But pretty short order, we went down to do our what we call our troop leaders course, young officers course. This is where we learn about essentially armoured warfare, in my case, formation reconnaissance, from everything about, driver and maintenance, so driving combat vehicles around South Dorset, learning how to maintain them, to gunnery, learning how to fire your tanks, to your tactics. And that's a sort of 4 to 6 weeks, 4 to 6 month course before you then go back and join your troop in Catterick. So hopefully you arrive at least knowing the basics. Yeah. Hopefully.
More learning.
And
then what was it like going back to your unit? What was it like going and
it was great. So I turned up. There was always quite a bit of movement, actually, if I reflect on it, between troops, 3rd Troop, B Squadron, and it was good. It was good, you meet the guys. I remember there was a lot of people away. It was quite difficult to get the whole squadron together, or to have all the troop together in one place.
Fair enough.
But pretty soon after we got back, it was then off to, I think we went down to, we had foot and mouth, actually. You may not remember. It was a national foot and mouth crisis.
Yeah, so, early 2000s?
Correct.
Yeah.
And all the regimental exercises were cancelled, and actually we were deployed from Catterick, my squadron, to Cornwall, just outside Exeter, on what was called Op Peninsula, which was military assistance to the civilian authority to support the efforts around foot and mouth.
Yeah, because I think the foot and mouth was when I was going through training. I can't remember if that was basic or if I was on the next phase. But do you remember the year? Was it?
Yeah, it would have been 2001, around about April, spring to summer 2001.
Because I think I just got posted out to Germany myself after all of my trade, basic and all that kind of stuff. So then I was essentially going away from the UK.
Yeah.
So I wasn't. That's why I wasn't involved with it, because I was over in the
amazing. Again, another amazing experience. I was second lieutenant. So technically, actually knew very little about life, but had been given tools to try and equip ourselves. But my grandly titled OC disposals, and what that actually meant was, for those in the UK at the time, they'll remember, and for listeners, they'll remember that there were, animal carcasses, there was culling taking place, cattle carcasses piling up because we didn't have the infrastructure in place to dispose of them safely. And it was our job to coordinate the culling process with the support of civilian officials, and once they were culled, to dispose of them. And so I remember turning up. On my right was my colleagues dealing with culling, and then we'd get a bit of paperwork saying at various location XYZ, there's 50 head of cattle that need to be moved to a burn site or rendering, or however else we're getting rid of them.
Yeah.
So probably about 22 at this point.
A lot of responsibility.
Now I think about it, then we just got on with it, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the next big thing for you with your regiment?
So we got back, and I think we got relatively into steady state. By this time, we're coming up to late 21, moving into 22, and then obviously
2001
we had 9/11.
Yeah.
I remember sitting in up on the tank park, and a friend of mine said, "Tony, have you seen what's happened?" And that was 9/11, which everyone's familiar with. I think what it meant for us was it was clear for all those in the military at that time that there's going to be some form of response. And so by mid-2022...
2002.
2002. Yeah, I'm jumping ahead. Gosh. 2002, there's rumblings about Iraq.
Yeah.
That was... So with regimental duty, I managed to do some adventure training, fairly standard stuff, and then went to Battus in Canada.
And are you still a second lieutenant at this point?
I think I've probably been promoted to a lieutenant.
Because am I right in thinking that after
first year you become a lieutenant?
Become a lieutenant.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then you're heading out to Battus, so Canada.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that?
So Canada was great. I was actually safety staff, so I think it was 4 Foxtrot, I think was my call sign. Again, what an amazing place. Prairies. I mean, Salisbury Plain on a industrial scale. Beautiful, about 8-hour drive south of Calgary, near Medicine Hat. Very intense, out day in, day out, back to back. I mean, for us safety staff, it was one thing, but I think for the guys on exercise, it's a good place for armoured training. And I think it was it was there that we were called back, actually, and told, look, this Iraq thing's getting quite serious. And we had to get back and start doing, preparing for what I think, despite what was going on in the political space, was probably to us fairly inevitable that somewhere at some time we may find ourselves out in the Middle East.
So that was then ramping up to head out to...
Yeah, I don't think there'd be any formal announcements this time, but
Okay.
I think in order to get sort of high readiness, get the vehicle sorted out, make sure your tank cages are organised, your everyone's got the right ticks in their box for mandatory training, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, fair enough. And then when did you know that you were going to head out there?
So it was pretty quick. I was down in Bovington on a regimental signals officers course. We were called off it, I think in January 2003. And I think that got up there. I think I drove up there, and within about 24 hours, could have been February, not sure the quite dates, we were literally told the low loaders were turning up to take our vehicles down to Southampton to get taken to Kuwait. And it was a case of unloading the tank cages, putting everything in the tanks. Literally, we were just stuffing things into the turrets.
Oh, really?
Because it was quick. Some of them got painted yellow quickly. We'll come on to that in a moment. And then the vehicles left us. And when you've got armoured corps soldiers without a tank, you feel a bit naked, really. So I can't quite remember what we did in the interregnum, but I think we probably got organised.
Mention about the paint.
Yeah, no, it was, I think our troop, they deployed yellow, but they went on a ship and arrived at Kuwait, and when we picked them up, the paint had all peeled off.
Oh, no.
So we had a series of kind of speckled paint vehicles in Kuwait, and as well as sort of, still had green uniform, because back then we probably didn't, supplies weren't in the right place. I remember having, I think I had green DPM 95, combat 95 trousers and a desert jacket, or maybe it may have been the other way around. But we had, green tanks and green uniform, and we were in the desert. So something had to be done about that.
Yeah. And then you're all kind of like sorting your kit out in Kuwait, waiting to be told
so
to
we
go.
were, so my squadron was, A squadron was attached to 7 Armour Brigade, Desert Rats. And I was at this point, so I've moved from B to A squadron. I was the support troop leader. And we were the formation recce for 7 Brigade. So we trained with them. We had US Marines attached to us. And I can't remember the quite timelines. I've written a diary, but we had four or so weeks in the desert, getting vehicles sorted out, painted, retrofitted with additional armour to protect against things like RPGs and 50 cal, and getting maps. Yep, I remember maps being, big maps. We were still analog then, Gav. So maps turning up, and then having to stick the maps together, and we didn't have any sellotape, and they were sandstorms. So goes back to what I say now to everyone. Don't give me the problem, find the solution. And I think the military and veterans are fantastic at doing that.